Is this some kind of joke? The guard's voice was sharp, cold. He stood with his arms crossed, blocking the entrance to Arlington National Cemetery. His partner smirked beside him. In front of them stood John Miller, 87 years old, stooped, his hands weathered by time. He wore a simple dark suit, frayed at the cuffs, but clean. It was the only one he owned. He didn't flinch at the guard's question. His gaze stayed fixed on the green hills beyond the gate, where the flags flew at half-mast. The younger guard stepped forward. "Sir, this is a private funeral for General Wallace. Invitation only. I need to see your credentials or you need to leave." The guard was a wall of rules. He saw a confused old man who had wandered into the wrong place. He couldn't see the history standing before him. More cars arrived. Long black sedans with government plates. Their occupants cast curious glances at the old man being held at the gate. John Miller simply waited. He had waited through worse. The guard, whose name tag read Jennings, sighed. "Look, Grandpa, I don't have time for this. The motorcade is arriving soon. You're creating a security issue. If you want to visit a grave, the public entrance is a mile that way." John's voice, when it came, was quiet, but it carried weight, like stones worn smooth by a river. "I'm here for the general. He would have wanted me here." The second guard, Corporal Davis, let out a short laugh. "Right, you and the general. Best pals, I'm sure. Sir, with all due respect, General Wallace was a 4-star. He advised presidents. He didn't have time for people without an invitation." A small crowd of mourners gathered. High-ranking officers, politicians, family members, all dressed in black. Their whispers were a low hum. John could feel their eyes on him. Pity, annoyance, embarrassment. "My name is John Miller," he said. "Just tell them John Miller is here." Jennings stepped closer. "John Miller, okay. Names don't mean anything without paperwork, old-timer. You have no medals, no ribbons, no proof of service. As far as I'm concerned, you're trespassing." John's hand drifted to his lapel, where he could feel the small metal pin. Not much to look at, just a dull piece of metal, no bigger than a dime, misshapen, tarnished, worthless-looking. A junior officer approached, a second lieutenant with a face too young for his rank. "What's the holdup, Corporal?" "This man refuses to leave, sir. Claims he's a friend of the general. No invitation, no credentials." The lieutenant looked John up and down. His gaze lingered on the worn suit, the scuffed shoes. His assessment was swift and dismissive. "Sir, you are disrupting a state funeral. I am giving you one final order to vacate immediately." John's patience was running dry. "I'm not leaving." The lieutenant's face hardened. "Then you are under arrest. Escort him out. If he resists, cuff him." As the guards moved to grab John's arms, the lieutenant noticed the small pin on his lapel. He sneered, reached out and flicked it with his finger. "What's this?" "Your prize from a Cracker Jack box." The moment his finger touched the metal, the world dissolved. The lawns vanished, replaced by mud and rain. A jungle half a world away. The air thick with blood and cordite. The sobs of mourners became screams of wounded men. Vietnam. 1968. A young captain lay pinned under a fallen tree. His leg twisted. That captain was David Wallace. He was trying to hand a piece of jagged metal to young John Miller, his hands trembling, covered in blood. "Keep this, John," Wallace rasped. "It's not regulation, but it means more than any medal. It means you were there. It means you saved us." The vision shattered. John was back at the gate, sun bright in his eyes. The lieutenant still smirking. But something had shifted in John's expression, a flicker of fire. He gently pushed the lieutenant's hand away. "Don't touch that." The guards grabbed John's arms. The crowd gasped. The humiliation was complete. But not everyone was just watching. Standing near the back was Captain Hayes. He had served 2 tours, had seen enough to recognize a true combat veteran. The quiet stillness, the way John absorbed insults without flinching. Something was wrong. When the guards grabbed John, Hayes knew he couldn't stand by. He pulled out his phone, made a call to Colonel Markinson, General Wallace's right-hand man for 20 years. "Sir, it's Captain Hayes. Security is detaining an elderly man at the gate. He says he knew the general. His name is John Miller." Hayes paused. "Sir, he's wearing a small pin on his lapel. Misshapen. Looks like shrapnel." There was sudden silence on the line, the kind that speaks louder than any shout. When the colonel's voice returned, it was transformed, raw, urgent. "What did you say his name was?" "Miller, sir. John Miller." The line went dead. Inside a command tent, Colonel Markinson stared at his phone like it had electrocuted him. He slammed it down, his face ashen. An aide looked up. "Sir, is everything all right?" "Get me General Peters, on the radio. Get him off the reviewing stand, now." He began pacing like a caged tiger, his mind racing. John Miller. After all these years, General Wallace had spent the last decade trying to find him, to thank him one last time. He had left explicit instructions in his final letter, a letter Markinson kept in his desk. "If a man named John Miller ever comes looking for me, give him whatever he asks. He is owed a debt this nation can never repay." The aide returned with a radio. "I have General Peters, sir." Markinson snatched it. "General, we have a code shepherd at the main gate. I repeat, code shepherd is active." The radio crackled. A 4-star general named Michael Peters came through. "Say again, Colonel. Shepherd? That's not possible." "It's him, sir. The description matches. The pin. The name. It's John Miller. Security is arresting him." The response was instant, glacial. "Halt everything. Halt the procession. I'm on my way." Back at the gate, the lieutenant was savoring his victory. He had restored order, removed the nuisance. He watched his men manhandle the old veteran. He decided to deliver one final blow. He walked over to John, got right in his face. "Last chance, old man. Walk away with what's left of your pride, or spend the funeral in a holding cell. We'll charge you. I'll recommend a psychiatric evaluation. A man your age with delusions. You're a danger to yourself." He sneered. "You want to pay respects? Do it from behind bars while you try to remember your own name." This was his overreach, the final act of arrogance. It started as a low rumble, a vibration felt in the chest. Every head turned. Cresting the hill was a motorcade, 3 black Suburbans, tinted windows reflecting the sun like obsidian mirrors. They weren't moving with dignity. They were moving with the speed and purpose of a rapid response team. They screeched to a halt, tires spitting gravel. The lieutenant froze, his guard still holding John. Doors flew open. Out stepped 6 men in immaculate army dress blues. Sergeants, majors, colonels, their chests heavy with ribbons and medals. Colonel Markinson emerged first, his face cold fury. Then the rear door opened. General Michael Peters stepped out, tall, imposing, 4 silver stars gleaming on each shoulder. The air grew still and heavy. The lieutenant felt cold dread. He and his men snapped to attention, their hands falling away from John as if he were radioactive. General Peters didn't spare them a glance. His storm cloud eyes scanned the scene, found what they were looking for, the stooped figure of John Miller. The general's demeanor changed, the hard aura dissolved, replaced by profound, reverent respect. He began to walk, polished boots marking slow, deliberate rhythm, past the terrified lieutenant, past the stunned guards, past everyone. He stopped 3 feet in front of John Miller. In dead silence, General Peters drew himself to full height, back ramrod straight. He raised his hand in the sharpest, most perfect salute the lieutenant had ever seen. A salute of ultimate respect. From a four-star general to a civilian in a threadbare suit, his voice boomed across the grounds. "Mr. Miller, it is an honor, sir," the lieutenant stammered. "General, sir, I apologize. This man was causing a scene. He had no authorization." The general's head snapped toward him. He didn't lower his salute, but his eyes drilled into the young officer. "He has more authorization to be on this ground than you or I will ever have, Lieutenant." Then, addressing the silent crowd, the general kept his salute and spoke. "For those who do not know, let me tell you who you are looking at. You see an old man, a civilian, but I see a giant. This is John Miller. To history books, that name means nothing. But to the men of 5th Special Forces, to the 1st Delta operators, and to the man we laid to rest today, he was a legend, known by another name, the Shepherd. A collective gasp, the name whispered, battlefield folklore, a ghost story. This man went into places that don't exist on maps to rescue men the government had written off as lost. He was a medic, a pilot, a navigator, and when needed, a warrior of unmatched ferocity. He never wore a rank, never accepted a commission, refused every medal offered. He said the only reward he needed was seeing his boys come home. The general stepped closer, eyes shining with tears. In spring of 1968, a helicopter carrying a dozen Green Berets was shot down deep in enemy territory. One survivor was a young captain named David Wallace. For 3 days they were surrounded, outnumbered 10-1. No hope of extraction. But on the third night, a single man came for them. Through the jungle, through enemy patrols, the Shepherd came. He carried half those men out on his own back. John Miller, right here. He is the reason David Wallace lived to become the great man we honor today. The general finally lowered his salute, but his eyes never left John's. He pointed to the tarnished pin. "You see this piece of metal? This trinket you mistook for garbage. This is shrapnel from a mortar shell that landed 3 feet from Captain Wallace." John Miller threw himself on top of Wallace, taking the blast that would have killed him. David Wallace forged that shrapnel into a pin himself, called it the Medal of Shepherds, the only one ever made, the highest honor a man like him could bestow. The vindication was total. The crowd no longer stared with pity, but with awe. Soldiers, from privates to colonels, slowly raised their hands in salute to the unassuming old man. The lieutenant's face drained of color. He looked physically ill. He and his guards hadn't just made a mistake. They had committed sacrilege. General Peters turned his full attention to them. His voice dropped to a quiet, lethal register. "You asked for his invitation. Let me be clear. Every headstone on that hill is his invitation. Every flag at half-mast is his personal welcome." He stepped toward them. They flinched. "You demanded medals. Lieutenant, the scars on this man's body are testament to courage your rule book could never quantify. He wears his valor in his heart, not on his chest. Your job is security, but your most essential tool isn't your sidearm. It is judgment, discernment, and in that, you have failed on a staggering scale. You stood in the presence of living history and saw nothing but a nuisance. You mistook a titan for a trespasser. His gaze was relentless. You will report to my aide. Give him your names and units. You will be in my office at the Pentagon at 0600 tomorrow for a conversation about the true meaning of respect. Is that understood?" "Yes, General," they mumbled, faces masks of shame. Just as the general turned away, John Miller reached out, placed a gentle hand on the general's arm. "Michael," he said softly, using his first name. "They were just kids doing their job the only way they knew how. Let it be." The general looked down at John, his expression softening. He nodded slowly. Then John turned to the young lieutenant. No anger in his eyes, only deep, profound wisdom. Son, that uniform doesn't automatically grant respect. It's a symbol, a promise. Respect is something you earn every day by how you treat people. And understand that sometimes the most important people, the ones who sacrifice the most, wear no uniform at all. Just remember that. General Peters personally escorted John Miller through the gates, past rows of saluting soldiers, past the stunned crowd. He led him not to the back, but to the very front row, among General Wallace's family. They had heard stories of the shepherd their whole lives. They embraced the old man with tears, thanking him for giving them 50 more years with their beloved patriarch. John sat through the service, a quiet, stoic figure, paying final respects to his friend, his duty finally done. The fallout was swift. The lieutenant and guards were not dishonorably discharged. John wouldn't have wanted that. Instead, General Peters oversaw their reassignment and retraining. He created a new program for all security personnel, a course in situational awareness, history, and empathy, teaching soldiers to look beyond the surface, to see the person, not just the uniform. The course became known as the Miller Protocol. The story of the old man at the gate became a cautionary tale, a lesson in humility taught to every recruit. Months later, the lieutenant was at a small diner. The bell jingled. An old man walked in, John Miller. The officer's heart hammered. He watched John order coffee. Finally, he stood, walked over, placed a $10 bill next to John's cup. "For the coffee, sir, and for the lesson. Thank you." John looked at him, saw the change, the humility that replaced arrogance. He offered a small smile. "Stay safe, son." The officer nodded, walked out. A silent understanding passed between them. John Miller's story reminds us that heroes don't always wear their greatness on their sleeves. The strongest people are often the quietest. The most decorated warriors sometimes refuse the medals, and the greatest acts of courage are rarely recorded in history books. The shepherd walked among us, unnoticed, underestimated, until the moment his truth was revealed. How many others like him exist? How many quiet guardians have we passed by without a second glance? The janitor, the groundskeeper, the old man at the bus stop, each one carrying stories we'll never hear, scars we'll never see, sacrifices we'll never understand. This is why we must look beyond the surface, why we must treat every person with dignity, because you never know who you're really talking to. That elderly man struggling with his groceries. He might have stormed beaches. The quiet woman at the library. She might have flown missions that saved thousands. The grandfather sitting alone. He might have carried his brothers through hell and never spoke of it. These are the real heroes, not because they seek recognition, but because they don't. They served, they sacrificed, and then they came home, put on civilian clothes, and disappeared into ordinary life, never asking for thanks, never demanding respect, content to be forgotten. But we must not forget them. We owe them more than our freedom. We owe them our attention, our respect, our willingness to see past the wrinkles and the worn clothes to the giants they truly are. The Miller Protocol that General Peters created wasn't just for security guards. It was for all of us. A reminder that judgment requires wisdom, that authority without discernment is tyranny, that the uniform doesn't make the man makes the uniform, and sometimes the greatest men wear no uniform at all. John Miller never wanted statues, never wanted parades. He just wanted to say goodbye to his friend, to honor a man who understood what that little pin meant. A man who knew that some bonds are forged in fire and blood and can never be broken. The shepherd asked for nothing, expected nothing. And in that humility, he taught us everything. About courage, about sacrifice, about the quiet dignity of service without recognition. The next time you see an elderly veteran, stop, listen, ask their story. Not because they'll tell you, most won't, but because your willingness to ask shows that you understand what they gave. And maybe, just maybe, you'll meet your own shepherd, standing at a gate, holding a memory, wearing a story too big for any medal. Don't let them stand alone. Don't make them prove themselves. Just show them the respect they earned a lifetime ago, even if the world forgot. Because heroes don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just quietly sweep the floors, wait at the gates, live among us, unnoticed, until someone finally sees them. If this story of quiet valor moved you, there are thousands more like it. Stories of men and women who gave everything and asked for nothing, who came home changed and stayed silent, who carried the weight so we wouldn't have to. They are the quiet guard, the silent sentinels, the unsung heroes who walk among us, and they deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be remembered. Not for their glory, but for ours, because in honoring them, we honor the best of what it means to be human. Subscribe to hear more stories, not for entertainment, but for remembrance, because every time we tell these stories, we keep their sacrifice alive. We remind ourselves what true heroism looks like. It doesn't wear a cape, it wears coveralls. It doesn't seek cameras, it seeks only to serve. Like the button below, not for me, but for them, for John Miller, for the shepherd, for every quiet guardian who never got the recognition they deserved. Share this story, not because it's dramatic, but because it's true, because somewhere, right now, there's another old veteran standing at another gate, being dismissed, being forgotten. Don't let it happen again. See them, honor them, remember them. They are the quiet guard, and their watch has never ended.